Hello, everyone. Welcome to Always Connected, a MegaMan Battle Network Retrospective. Thank you all so much for joining. I sincerely appreciate it. MegaMan is one of my absolute favorite franchises. I've been moderating the subreddit for like 6 years, and I guess now is a good time to introduce myself. Like I said, hi, I'm OneOneTwo, pronouns they, them. I've been playing MegaMan for like about half my life at this point. And my favorite Battle Network game is the 6th and final game. And yeah, 6 for the win. And I love Bass. I just think he's a cool character. And if you want to join the subreddit or the Discord, there you go. And here's my co-host, Green Z-Saber.
Yeah, I was roped into this at the last moment, but I like challenge runs. I am a huge MegaMan fan. Battle Network and Zero series is basically got me through my high school and middle school years. I'm also a completionist. I've completed all main Battle Network games as well, so I guess that's why I'm here.
All right. Real quick, before we continue, yes, I made this in my spare time. Don't worry about it. But there are spoilers in this panel. If you do not want to be spoiled on any of the games, this is not the panel for you because we will be talking about all the spoilers. Cool? All right. So starting off, obviously the first game launched in 2001 was a launch title for the Game Boy Advance, and it definitely was an interesting game for a number of reasons. I did replay this game like the day the Legacy Collection came out, and honestly, I found it a little bit hard to go back to just because the later games introduced so many more things in general, from style changes to being able to use star code chips, and also like tag chips in 6 is something I really missed, and a bunch of other aspects that I felt that made one a little bit more bare bones than I remember.
Yeah, the main internet's also pretty mazy as well. The later series fixed that, thankfully.
I do think that one thing that the first game did really, really well, though, is I really liked the last part of the game. Like, in particular, World 3 area and the final boss against Life Virus was one of my favorite parts of any of the games, just because I like the idea of a level rush. Like, all the Mega Man games have boss rushes. That's just something we've become used to at this point. But a level rush, that's not something I've seen very often. And though the 6th game would probably do this concept slightly better, I do think the first game deserves a lot of credit for giving this idea a try.
Yeah, and I also like how you get this power-up mode with the Buster and the Life Virus fight, so you can Buster only that thing if you want.
For sure. I will say the post-game was really obnoxious in this one, and unfortunately, I think that that's one of the parts of the game that falls flat the most, just because there's literally no story. You just fight Pharaoh Man and, you know, who is that? Who else was it? It's Pharaoh Man, Shadow Man,
Bass.
and Bass, and that's it. And there's just no like story justification. And obviously, I know it was the first game. And for those of you who don't know, actually, the Battle Network series was originally going to be a horror game, and before it switched genres, which I can imagine probably led to some interesting development and caused there to be some crunch here or there. But either way, I do think that the game, for what it was in 2001, was an enjoyable time, and even though I do think that it struggles a lot in certain aspects, I do think it's worth playing at least once.
Yeah, one thing I like about Battle Network 1 that's unique to that game is how you can put 10 of each chip in your folder. Like one of my end game folders was Fighter Sword B, Hero Sword B, and Knight Sword B. So, yeah, nothing lasts very long with that folder.
I used Sharkman way too much, like to the point where I honestly, I feel like it was not fair because it was doing so much damage and it hits all the rows. I don't know, just something about that felt like cheating, but considering how annoying some of those dungeons are, especially like, it's hard to overstate how much I hate power plant comp. Like, whoever designed that should not be a level designer. I'm sorry, that is not a good stage. Waterworks was also not great, but like the fact that you have to keep recharging the battery in power plant comp was the worst, and I have zero qualms admitting that I used a guide on my replay because I just did not want to deal with that nonsense again. All right, I guess moving on though, later in 2001, we also got MegaMan Battle Network 2, and this is where I feel the game or the series really got its start. I feel like most of 1's plot was sort of like Saturday morning cartoon, except of course for the huge twist at the end that, oh my god, MegaMan.exe is Lan's dead brother, which I still, like, even though I've known about this plot twist for like almost like 5 years at this point when I started playing this series, it still makes me think, how did this get through the censors? Like, the fact that they just turned someone's dead brother into essentially Siri, like, how did that happen?
Also remember the airplane rap and Magnus saying, damn you.
Oh, yeah, in the second game. Yeah, this game's...
1, 2, 3, yo, chicky, chicky, baby, something like that.
Yeah, the second game's dialogue is interesting, to say the least, and I definitely also question how the censors did not come down that hard on this game. There are some aspects of Battle Network 2 that I think have not aged quite as favorably. I know some people were a little taken aback by that warning that they give at the beginning of the Legacy Collection, which, like, says there are certain aspects of these games that have not aged that well and do not reflect our values today. It's mostly talking about 2, a little bit of 4 as well, but mostly 2.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know?
No,
Oh,
I didn't
right,
know.
because you haven't played Legacy Collection.
Yeah, I do know about the questionable stuff though. The whiskey scene and the airplane. It's mostly the airplane stuff that's where it starts to get questionable.
That's true. Like, between Netopia and Magnet Man's whole chapter, like, I feel like they crammed all of the really weird stuff into that one part of the game, and I don't know why. I will say Battle Network 2 introduced, of course, the style change, which is one of my favorite aspects of Battle Network. I think that it allows for some really cool strategies. The randomness element of the elements can be a little annoying because you can't actually determine, at least to my knowledge, what like fire, wood, aqua, or elect element that you get.
Yeah,
unless I'm
it's
mistaken.
random.
So yeah, that bit is a little annoying, especially because if you get an element right before a boss that you are weak to, that sucks. Spoiler alert, that happened to me. I got Aqua Shield right before Thunderman. So I did get a shield. It also meant that if I did not block, I took double damage, which really sucks against a boss like Thunderman, who hits very hard and is very fast. So that was annoying.
That's why you switch off the style.
I ended up just not using the style to win. Yeah, that was pretty much it. This is one thing that I think 2 does better than 3. I do wish you could hold 2 styles like in 2, because in 3 you can only hold 1, which I don't really know why they made that change, like maybe for balancing. But
Possibly, yeah.
Either way, it did make it a lot more convenient to like switch up your strategy. Like, oh, let's say I was facing I don't know, Bubble Man, and I had a style that I didn't like. I could switch to a different style and just use that instead of having to use no style, which in 3 was annoying. The post game also really liked the post game of 2. The bosses were really fun. Planet Man is probably one of my favorite bosses in the whole series. I just thought he was a really cool like finale boss at the end of the World 3 area. I just thought that was really neat.
Yeah, it's got a hard mode too. I think it's the only Battle Network game with a hard mode.
Not counting 4's 3 loops, yeah, it's the only one. I do think that hard mode is an enjoyable challenge, and I actually was surprised at how hard the beginning of the game was, especially because you don't have very good chips to start, and they start throwing like endgame enemies at you almost immediately, which can be very overwhelming, especially in those license tests. Ugh.
Well, the Legacy Collection does give you the gospel chips right off the bat, though.
That's true, and I tried not to use them because they were a little too strong. But for those license tests, I was definitely starting to get a little frustrated with how early you would get stuff like the Megalians or the. I remember there was one where I got a shadow in the license test. That was annoying.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm thinking of something
shadows
else.
are the worst.
Absolutely
the worst.
Having to use sword chips for those is so annoying, and I'm glad that they are not really in the later games. But all right, moving on, of course. Battle Network 3.
Yeah.
I know this is a fan favorite. So, Battle Network 3 is interesting because I feel like in a lot of ways, obviously, it improved upon 2, And it added, people love to talk about the story, which I totally get that. Stuff like Mamoru's whole arc, and also the end game, and especially the post game against Serenade and Base are really cool. Secret Area has like one of my favorite themes in any of the Battle Network games, and it just looks awesome. Like it's really hard to describe, but like the serenity of it is like almost disarming until you get thrown into a random encounter and suddenly you're fighting like those stupid gate things. I forgot the name.
The aura enemies too.
Yes, the numbers and the auras. Jeez, I hate those things. That being said, I do think that Battle Network 3 has a little too much backtracking for my taste. Like, you do have to backtrack a lot. And especially with like stuff like getting Ice Ball M or having to go back across the whole internet to take out the flames from Flame Man. And this was also in 2 with Freeze Man scenario. That was honestly worse in my opinion.
Yeah, and you also have to consume chips too of that element. Which,
Oh God, yeah, for the fire. Yeah, that was annoying. Or in Hospital Comp.
Yep.
And that's another thing, honestly. I do think that 3 sort of lacks the quantity of dungeons that a lot of the other games have. 4 also has this problem, but 3 in particular, I really wish there were just more dungeons, because even though I didn't like Hospital Comp that much, I thought the first dungeon and the last dungeon were great. I thought School Comp and, what was it just called? World 3 area, I think?
Something like that.
World 3 area and with the tanks was also really cool. And yeah, as we already said, the post game was really cool. The new style changes were interesting, although I guess my hot take is I don't think Shadow style was very good. That I don't know if that's like considered a hot take. I thought ground style and white was like incredible, and I destroyed Serenade with that especially. But Shadow style, I don't know. What style did you use in 3?
I like Bug style a lot, but I also like the team style because of the Navi chips. They got some really good ones.
For sure. I definitely liked rocking team style a lot, especially just because you can add so many Navi chips. Yeah, I thought 3 was pretty good. I probably don't like it nearly as much as a lot of the fan base does, just because of the backtracking and the having to consume chips. And also, another thing, having to shrink yourself with compress, that really sucked, because I like kitted out my my Navi customizer in such a way that it was almost completely full for most of the game as soon as I got the parts. So having to switch in and out compress was the worst.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a big fan of the post game though. There's not many games that have you do like a time trial with a preset folder that had an interesting strategic aspect to it, and then capping all of it off with the Omega Navis as well, followed by Alpha Omega.
Surprisingly, I beat Alpha Omega on my first try on the Legacy Collection, which I don't know how I did that. I guess I just got really lucky, or maybe I was a little bit less rusty than I thought I was. But no, I completely agree. The Omega Navis were fantastic. Finding them sometimes was not incredible, having to look all over the internet. But no, I also really liked the post game bosses. I would say 3 had my favorite post-game bosses between Yamato Man, Dark Man, and Serenade and Base. I just thought all of them were really fun.
You mean Japan Man?
Okay. yes, technically yes. Also, what was I going to say? And yeah, the time trials, as you mentioned earlier, were awesome. I thought that was a really cool idea to get you used to using like weird decks. I used the famous one a lot. I don't know which one did you use?
Snake is supposedly the folder to use. Snake.
No, that makes sense as well. All right, well, I guess we'll have to move on to Battle Network 4. Yeah, I had a feeling the reaction was going to be like this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, 4 got really controversial. I don't know, was it like this when it came out? Because I don't remember it being this controversial since when it launched. Either way, I did. All right, so 4 definitely has a lot of problems. Translation, obviously awful. I don't think there's really any debate about that. Yes, legs go LAN. what a polite young man she was, etc. Yes, the game was translated poorly. I know a lot of people really, we were talking about this before it started, I know a lot of people really dislike the 3 loops thing for 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
But I do want to talk about some of the positive aspects of Battle Network 4, because I do think it has some that people don't discuss nearly as much. In particular, the introduction of double souls, which is my favorite transformation mechanic in any of the games, and also the net traversal. I actually thought the net was really well done in this game for whatever reason. Like, it didn't feel that annoying to go through, especially to go to, like, the undernet was really fast, which was especially nice considering in the previous 3 games it took a little bit longer than I would have liked to get to, like, the undernet or the World 3 areas.
Don't forget the air hockey chip.
Oh, yeah. I think air hockey is everyone's MVP at this point.
Yeah.
It's, man, at least until you got to Duo, and then Duo was like, no air hockey for you. I remember I struggled a lot with Duo on my recent playthrough. I think he was the final boss I died the most to, either that or Nebula Gray in the 5th game. But I actually enjoyed Battle Network 4 a lot more than I was expecting on my recent replay in the Legacy Collection. And I mean, we can see here that the double souls, I think that they strike a really nice balance. Like, 4's double souls are very much like about like raw power and like decimating your enemy as fast as possible, whereas the Blue Moon ones are a little more technical. Like, for example, Junkman having you recycle all of your chips or use Poltergeist to throw stuff at enemies. That was like one of my favorite stuff. One of my favorite things, like being able to just pick up all the junk and like the cubes and just like toss them at the bosses. That was amazing. I will say I was very annoyed that Proto Soul was given to me last. That sucked because I love Proto Soul, and I did not get that until game 3 on my recent replay. So, yeah, I got Search Soul really late too. Honestly, I don't know why. Like, I got really unlucky in this playthrough for both Red Sun and Blue Moon.
I think it's random. Yes.
Guts and Aqua are always first for Red Sun and Blue Moon, respectively. The rest of them, I'm pretty sure, is random, though.
Yeah, I think it's random.
So, really, I don't know. I'll have to look into that, but I'm fairly sure Guts and Aqua are the only ones that are like, you will always get this first. Okay, there you go.
There you go.
You got lucky then, because I would have really appreciated that against like Duo or Laserman, especially Laserman. Or Shade. Oh God, Shademan Omega is its own conversation. That took so long to finally get that SP chip.
Gundel Sol, though.
True, Gundel Sol is OP. Oh, and that's true. I almost completely forgot about that. Yeah, Battle Network 4 was the first game to introduce the crossover with Boktai.
Yeah.
And
Taiyo!
So yeah, I really appreciated that. I will admit, I actually have not played Boktai itself, but I really want to and probably will, like in the next few weeks or months. But I always liked having like the Django side quest and also just all the chips from Boktai. It didn't feel like a half-hearted crossover. It definitely felt like they wanted to integrate them into the game as much as possible, especially with that last toy RoboComp having all the Boktai elements, even though embarrassingly, the first time I did this, like, this is not Legacy Collection, this is like the Wii U Virtual Console. I did not know anything about Boktai, and I thought that Django was the villain, and I flipped the story around, and I was stuck for like an hour trying to figure out what the right order was, and it wasn't until I realized that Django was the protagonist and that Otenko was also the protagonist that I actually got through that, and I felt like such an idiot figuring that out. Yeah, moving on, we have Battle Network 5, which I know people really like this game. I also really like 5. Double Team DS is great. I also I think the GBA originals are perfectly playable as well. I think the main thing I really like about 5 is it feels like it took a lot of 4's missteps and sort of corrected them. Because like the double souls were great, but I feel like 5's double souls were even better than 4's in some ways. and it really sort of solidified the mechanics. I can't believe we didn't mention this, but dart chips. Dart chips were introduced in 4.
Yep.
I think that 5 handled them in a more interesting way since Chaos Unison is now a thing. Yes, the Chaos Unisons are really fun, even though if you don't kill the enemy when you use it, good luck. But yeah, they're really fun to use. Also, the liberation missions. My hot take on this, I guess, is that I love the liberation missions until the post game.
Right.
I hate liberation missions 8 and 9 because they're super long, and 9 has 2 bosses. I think what is it? Cosmo Man and was it Cloud Man? Was the other one? What? Oh, Blizzard. Sorry. Yeah, fighting both Cosmo Man and Blizzard Man at the same time and trying to spread out all of your Navis to attack both of them was so annoying, and it took an amount of time that I am not willing to disclose to finally get the best ranking for that because it took so long. And of course, I feel like 5 is sort of the game where there's the most differences between the 2 versions. Obviously, the story is different because Proto Man and Colonel are just different characters, and Beryl and Shad act differently. But I also just think that the Double Souls offer enough variety between the 2 games that it makes for a really good replay. I think that's probably why they did Double Team DS, because it's different enough that you could play the game twice and not have that much burnout, in my personal opinion. And the bosses in this game in particular were very good, although, geez, Nebula Grey and Chaos Lord were brutal.
Air shoes.
True. Air shoes really come in handy. The one thing, I would say the only thing about 5 that I actively disliked was the post-game requiring you to open the Nebula area gates and then backtrack all the way to the beginning just to ground up all the chips. That really sucked because you have to go all around the internet and you can only find the V2 and V3 viruses when you open their gates in the Nebula area, and that took forever, and I really wish they let you do that earlier because it just padded out time a lot, and it sort of made the post-game story feel a lot more dragged out than it needed to. Any final thoughts about 5 before we move on to 6?
I think you've covered most of it.
Fair enough. All right, well, now we have my favorite game in the series, Battle Network 6. We got a lot of Gregar fans in the house, and I am one of you as well. I also prefer Gregar, but Falsar is cool too. I would say the main thing about Battle Network 6 that why it's my favorite game in the series personally is just the sheer amount of customization you have. Between all the crosses and beasting out, I feel like this is the game that offers the most amount of customization for MegaMan, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah. The danger music though when you beat the final boss.
They corrected that in the Legacy Collection.
Oh, that's great.
They actually finally corrected that, and then they didn't do it for 4, which, why? You did it for one of them. Should have done it for both of them, in my opinion. Also, I also just really liked the new cast of characters. Of course, Mail, Dex, Yai, and all the rest of them are fantastic characters, but I do think that by the time we got to 5, we were starting to see some repeating character arcs, and I think it was a good idea to sort of switch things up with Mick and Tab and everyone from Central Town. I just thought it was a really cool switch that allowed for the older characters to sort of take a little bit of a break and not repeat their same story arcs a few times. I thought that was a really smart change. I do wish you could skip the Lev bus animation, though. That's one thing that really annoyed me, especially in my recent playthrough, is that you have to wait for that to play out every single time you want to go to anywhere else except for AC/DC Town, I guess, since you just get off of the metro line. The other main complaint about 6, which I think I've noticed a lot of people tend to agree with, is did anyone else find the game just too easy overall? Yeah, base was hard. I completely agree. Base was really hard.
He wasn't as bad.
Oh, sorry. That's fair. I agree that 2 and 3 base were harder, but I feel like in 6 in particular, they maybe course corrected a little too much from 5 because 5's endgame was really, really challenging. And 6 was like, it never really got to that same level of difficulty. And you just go like, and just like kill all the bosses in like 2 minutes, which was, I don't know. I just felt like it didn't give me the same level of challenge as like the previous games, but that's just me.
Well, I think it's a nice send-off for the series at least.
That's fair. I do think the ending of this game is absolutely superb, and I would not change a single thing about it. Like, especially with sort of Wily's final speech and how it sort of wraps up every character arc, and of course, Lan and Mael actually get married, and it fast forwards like 15 years. That was kind of cool to like finally see the resolution to that arc. And the post game as well. With I actually played the Boktai side quest in 6 for the first time very recently with the Legacy Collection, and I was not expecting how cool that side quest was going to be, especially with fighting the Count. That was awesome. Like 100%. I'm so glad they added that back in with 6 because that really, I think, was one of the things that really made the Legacy Collection.
Yeah, I got to play through that myself sometime this year. I'm looking forward to that side quest the most.
For sure. All right, so the spin-offs. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here because there's a lot of spin-offs. I'm sorry to anyone who really likes a lot of these spin-offs, but I don't like most of them. There's a few that I really like. I don't think they're nearly as good as the other series. I guess to just quickly go in order, Network Transmission, which is the one on the left. Soundtrack is great. Zero is cool. I like the ideas they were going for. I also think that it was really weird to have an inverse difficulty curve where the beginning of the game was incredibly challenging and almost felt borderline unfair until you started building up your folder and started like really getting into the groove of it before the end game just sort of petered out, I guess. I don't know. I didn't think Life Virus was a great final boss for this game, and I don't think... Base was kind of cool, but also you don't really kill him. He just kind of flees. I don't know. I didn't think that was the best way to end the game.
I've never played Network.
Never played Network Transmission?
No.
Fair enough. I do like the Network Transmission original Navis. Needleman, Gravity Man, and Swordman, and Brightman and Starman too were fantastic. I thought they were great. I also like how it remixed the classic series stages into Battle Network. Like Quickman, you had the force beams, the instant death lasers. I think Brightman had the platforms again, and Gravity Man had the weird gravity, of course, like in MegaMan 5. I definitely think that aspect was cool, but I don't think the game came together nearly as much as it should have. Yeah. And then there's Battle Chip Challenge. You can start this one if you want. I know we were talking about that earlier.
Basically, RNG the game.
Battle Chip Challenge is my least favorite Mega Man game. Out of all of them, not just Battle Network, out of every single Mega Man game. And yes, I know X6 and X7 exist. I know that there are other Mega Man games that are not great. It is worse than soccer, and I know that that's a hot take. But as Green Z Saber said, the fact that the game is almost entirely RNG is I just don't think it's fun. Like, I just don't think it makes for an enjoyable game. Like, yes, you get to, be the operator. That's cool. But honestly, I felt like 4.5 Real Operation did that better, which is the one right below Battle Chip Challenge's artwork.
And we never got that game.
Unfortunately, I had to play that through the patch that came out a little while ago. And that was very cool, by the way. Kudos to everyone who worked on that. I will say the one thing that Battle Chip Challenge gave us that was really cool was I did like Turbo Man and Ring. They were cool net navis. I thought they were neat. Have you played the ports that we have on the far right? Battle Network 5, Double Team DS, and Operate Shooting Star.
I haven't, no. You forgot Wonder Swan.
Oh, actually, I tried to like fit that in, but it wouldn't fit on the page. Also, I couldn't really find like high quality artwork for that for whatever reason. But yeah, I actually did like Rockman EXE Wonders 1. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought yeah, the Wonders 1 game is great, actually. I kind of liked it more than Network Transmission, maybe? I don't know. I just feel like the game was a lot better made than I was expecting. And especially the difficulty curve was much more balanced, in my opinion. As for Double Team DS and Operate Shooting Star, I think they're definitely better than the originals, especially Operate Shooting Star. My least favorite main series game is Battle Network 1, and I do think that Operate Shooting Star definitely improved on a lot of aspects of 1, especially with Elecman's dungeon not being nearly as annoying, and having star code chips and stuff like that was really nice. Don't think the Star Force crossover part was very good, unfortunately. It felt kind of forced, and also Clockman, Jesus Christ, that guy is a creep and a half. I don't know who wrote that guy, but ooh. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of that crossover, but the game itself was fine, and controlling Geo in Battle Network was awesome. This will be a very, very fast slide, but I did want to quickly shout out the fact that Phantom of Network and Legend of Network were recently preserved. What was that, like a couple weeks ago at this point? Maybe a month ago? Like, the fact that this is preserved is absolutely incredible. I have not had the time to play these yet, so we won't be discussing them very much. I played like 10 minutes of Phantom of Network and thought it was really cool, the fact that this even works on a mobile phone like that. But if you get the chance, definitely check these out. Big shout outs to Rockman Cosmo and everyone who worked on that effort. That is such an awesome thing to preserve something like this. And yeah, the last main slide we have is about the Legacy Collection. I cannot believe this is real, even right now. Like, the fact that these games are finally back, they're on modern consoles. It's on the Switch. We can take it on the go again. What a concept. Yeah, well, to be fair, I know people were a little upset about the 2 volumes. I sort of see it as, like, if people want to play the front half or the back half of the series, they don't have to pay for the whole thing. At least that's how I interpret it. I'm sure there's some other reason as well, but I just think that the Legacy Collection did a really good job of reintroducing the series to newcomers and veterans alike. I think that stuff like the patch cards was awesome. I had never touched any of those before this, and having them in the game to mess around with was a ton of fun.
And the event chips, too.
Yes, the event chips. I was so curious for the longest time what chips like Base or Gateman SP did. And finally trying them and seeing what they actually do in battle was awesome. I remember there was one program advance in Battle Number 2.
Darkness.
That required the event chips. And I was so curious. I loaded them up immediately. And when I finally got, there's one that's not an event chip, and I'm trying to remember what the third component is.
It's a Base X, Anti-Navi X, and then Gospel, any of the Gospels.
Right. So when I got Anti-Navi and Base, I tried it on, I want to say I think I actually tried it on Gospel, just to see what it did. And lo and behold, when it basically killed Gospel in one hit, I was like, oh.
Yeah. Sadly, it doesn't work on Shadows.
That's true. No, the shadows will forever be the bane of everyone's existence, I guess. But yeah, the Legacy Collections are really cool. And also Buster Max, I know that this was a little controversial in the fandom, but I do think that it's a really good inclusion to help get people into the series. Because let's be honest, these games can be kind of hard at times, especially in the post game and the end games. And I do think that it was a good thing ultimately to add it in for accessibility's sake. And also, God, I really appreciate it when I was grinding for those 1% chips like Drop Down or Leaf Shield. This was so helpful.
Star Force when, Capcom? Star Force Collection,
yes,
please.
Star Force when. But yeah, now we'll definitely take some questions if anyone has some. I know we didn't touch on the NT Warrior anime that much, but we can answer questions about that as well if you guys have it. Yes.
So which would you say is the hardest final boss out of all of them? Personally, I think it's
Duo for me, yeah.
I would say Duo is the hardest, but Nebula Gray also is ridiculous. Like the fact that orb circles around him and you have to wait until it comes back around to even hit it was extremely irritating, and it took me way longer than I care to admit to beat that on my recent playthrough. Yes, in the red.
So I know in Japan they had, what was it, it's like Rockman 4.5?
Yes.
Like, I don't know too much about that. Like, can you explain like what that one basically entailed?
So 4.5, the best way I can explain it is it's sort of like a successor to Battle Chip Challenge in that you play as the operator, quote unquote, but they fleshed the game out a little more, and there's also like a real time element in that you can only do tournaments on like Saturdays or Sundays, and you have to build up your chips on the weekdays. And I think that it was actually a really cool concept. I don't recommend playing it without the balance patch now, because otherwise you do have to wait until Saturday or Sunday to play the game. But I do think it was a really neat concept that heavily expanded on Battle Chip Challenge without like exacerbating its flaws. In the pink.
What are your thoughts on Base's narrative after 3? How it's kind of just a shell of his former self.
I see Base's narrative after 3 as at the end of 3 he did lose his memory, and he sort of maybe remembers Cossack in the post game, but not really. I sort of see his narrative after 3 as him trying to find himself again, since he still remembers so little of like what was going on. I agree that they definitely could have handled it better, but I do think it sort of exacerbates his character arc as like a tragic character who was failed by his creators, and he's still trying to find himself to this day. Let's see, in the Met hat.
What did you think of the anime? What are your thoughts?
I thought that it was a little strange at times. There's a few questionable episodes. I do think it was fun overall. The last 2 seasons were not my favorite. I don't know, something about Beast and Beast Plus story going way off the rails was not necessarily my favorite thing in the world. Plus was not good. I'm sorry, like the way they tried to shoehorn, they're like, let's do network transmission and Legend of Network and Phantom of Network and all of this other stuff, and it's like you can't fit all of that into one season, especially when the episodes are shorter. That doesn't work. I'm gonna go in the back a little bit. Yes, in the very back. Yes.
What are your thoughts on Battle Network's 3-year obsession with tournament parks?
Oh,
Do you want to answer this one?
I'm good. You can have it.
I would say it was fine in 3. 4, I think, was definitely a little much with the tournament arcs. I do think the game story is a little bit better than people give it credit for. One thing I really like about 4 is that the villains start taking a lot more drastic measures as the game goes on because of the influence of dark chips, and I do think that was kind of cool. Maybe it didn't always have to be a tournament arc, though. I can agree there. Let's see. I think we still have a lot of time, so I should be able to answer all the questions. Yeah. Yes. Yes, him.
So what are your thoughts on so when Battle.net first came out, we were still kind of on old flip phones. What do you think about how smartphone technology kind of advanced the fact to the point smartphones are basically PCs now?
Oh,
Do you want this one as well? Or?
I don't have it.
I do think it was very interesting that Battle Network, I don't want to say it predicted a bunch of things that happen in real life, but like I was a little freaked out when I saw a news story about an oven getting hacked. I was like, okay, you clearly have not played the first game at all, but this is like this is the first scenario. Come on, guys. I think it's interesting because I remember I read an interview with Iguchi that said that he like sort of just made up things as they went along that sounded interesting, and they weren't trying to like predict the future, and yet they somehow still managed to do that anyways, which is bizarre but kind of hilarious. Yes. What?
Battle Network 3 where they only have the one style, I often thought that maybe in 2 they had 2 slots because you get hub style at the end.
Yep.
Area, so you have one more slot for that other style.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
a
true.
great point. I think that there's definitely some truth to that. I honestly didn't get hub style in the Legacy Collection yet just because I was kind of lazy, but that's a good point. Let's see. MegaMan hat with the yellow shirt. Yes.
Do you think Upstyle should have returned to future games? Because I know it was a real hassle to get in the second
It turns into
Yeah.
it turns into an NCP part. Yeah, I do think that it was cool in the second game, but I distinctly remember we didn't really touch on PvP that much. But I do think it sort of ruined the PvP in Battle Number 2 because everyone kind of had to use hub style because it was all of the powers combined. And I do think that the later games got a lot better about not having end game items be so overpowered to the point where if you do not have this, you lose immediately, especially in 5 and 6. That's true. The 6 still has problems with that, but I do think that hub style was a little too much with like if you don't have this, you just lose in PvP immediately. Yes.
What is both your favorite Battle Network OST and outline?
For me, I really like 2's ending theme. It's got that touchy feeling to it.
I would say Surge of Power from Battle Network 6, the boss theme. That was great. I listen to that sometimes when I'm like taking the train wherever. Do you want to call on someone?
Sure, you in the black shirt over there. Darkness, for sure.
Bodyguard. I abuse it so much, but it's way too powerful to not use. Let's see. Yes, in the front with the pink hair and yeah.
Well, okay, I'm confused. Why was 2 problematic? That's actually the only one I played, so.
There were a few lines of dialogue that were kind of racist, unfortunately, and there were especially a few things that just didn't age very well in that department. And also, there was one side quest that was really kind of gross. I don't want to get into it too much, but I can see why they put the warning. I'll put it that way. It definitely has not aged that
Yeah,
well.
play through the game again and get to the plane scenario. Then that's where like most of it is.
And that's true, and Netopia especially. There were some elements that were. Yes, in the center, right next to the camera.
So what do you think about the Legacy Collection preserving the 2 versions, instead of dividing them into one game?
I understand why they did it to an extent. I think part of it was just to let people buy the games separately because some people really like 1, 2, and 3, and other people really like 4, 5, and 6, and they do feel kind of separate.
Like white and blue.
Oh,
Right.
okay, yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, I'm sure it's possible to combine them. My guess is they just didn't see it as worthwhile. They probably should have, though, especially considering 5 DS did that.
Yeah, it does foster that trading aspect, though.
That's true.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you actually can't trade with yourself, though. You have to trade with other people.
Yeah, you could. Well, you probably could trade with somebody else. I mean,
Yeah.
we have the internet now, so
Yeah, that's true.
it's not. You don't have to like find somebody with a game locally and then trade with them that way. You can trade with people online.
That's true. Although I will say, grinding for balance and Delta Ray in 3 and the PvP chips in 2 is the worst thing ever, and it should not have a 1 in 16 chance or 1 in 32 chance in the case of balance. That sucks. Why did they keep that? They should have just given it to you like in the Wii U version. Yes, in the front.
So something that has kind of occurred to me is that one of the unexplored concept in the games is something that you would see in NT-order access, for instance, the concept of cross fusion. Why exactly that was never implemented in the games? I'm not exactly sure why that was. I mean, what were your thoughts beyond that?
I mean, I don't really know why they never implemented that in the games. They kind of touched on it in 3 in the ending, where although it was very different in that the operator fused with the Navi in the cyber world and basically started fighting you as like a powered up version of the Navi. I don't know why they never implemented it quite like they did in the anime. That probably would have been cool though. That's true. True. That's true. Base cross.
It's
That was
in the DS though.
yeah. And in 5 GBA, they added it for the Legacy Collection. It's a patch
okay.
card, which was very nice. It was very useful in fighting Chaos Lord, especially. Yes, in the center, yeah.
I think it's done. I mean, it's got a proper closure. They
I
might
w-
make it like a side game maybe, but I don't see a 7 happening.
I would say maybe. I don't think it's impossible. I do agree that Battle Network 6's ending being that conclusive does make it very, very hard, and especially now that Star Force exists, where it takes place like 200 years after Battle Network, you kind of have to make it a midquel of sorts, which is not easy. Considering the Legacy Collection is what, the 4th best-selling Mega Man game ever at this point, I definitely think it's not an impossibility, but I don't think it's a certainty either, for sure. Yes, Pat should be the protagonist, and that would be awesome. I know there was a comic that released related to that was very cool. Ryo Takamasaki, right? Yes. I think we have time for. Oh, we still have like 15 minutes. We can answer a lot of questions. Yes, in the red.
For both of you, favorite and least favorite story mini games.
Mini games.
Like the cooking, the samurai doge.
I do like the samurai one, even though that's a bit controversial. Especially the one where you have to fight like 100 of them, right?
Yep. The 100 samurai minigame. I would say, honestly, that was my least favorite. I still find that annoying to this day, to the point where Capcom had to put a question about it on their FAQ about how like hard it is, and it basically said "get good," which I thought was the funniest thing ever. That was hilarious. Favorite minigame? That's hard. There's a lot of fun ones. I would say my favorite was probably the boulder punching in 4 with Metal Man. That was awesome. In the very, very back in the hood, in the beanie, yes.
What would you say for both? What would you say probably your
Least favorite of the, sorry, one more time, least favorite of the. Oh, the double souls, sorry. That's hard. I would say, you know, let me actually just go back to, let me go back to here so I can like look at them because they're in the key art.
I personally didn't use the double souls that much, so I don't really have a firm answer there.
I would say the one that I struggled to use the most, I would say it was probably Number Soul, honestly. Like, I like all of them, but Number Soul is very heavily focused around, like, you get 10 chips on your custom screen, which does give you a lot of flexibility, and obviously the die roll is pretty interesting, but it does make it kind of difficult when you don't have any, like, strengths or weaknesses, and I do think I use the other ones a lot more. Actually, I take it back. My least favorite double soul is Wind Soul, because I do think that it's very difficult to use that properly with the wind. I'm sure you can do it, and I'm sure there's a lot of great PvP players out there who do it well. I could never make it work. Let's see. Yes.
How sweaty is PvP?
Very. One word answer. Very. Yes. On Chrono Rex, I actually have not played it. I really should. I have not played it though,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
haven't played it either, or the Shanghai one. I know there's a.
Yes.
Where do you cost the various virus battle reward systems? You're seeing where they just get cut cracks from the counter hits, that sort of thing. Like, each game seems to do it a little bit differently.
Yeah, I like the counter reward system with the bug frags a lot. It rewards skill in a way, and I do like games that reward you for doing something like extra skillful.
I would say it was handled the best in 3, where if you countered an enemy, it gave you a bug frag. I thought that was the best way to go about it, because grinding for them in the later games got really annoying, because you had to sort of hope that there was a GMD, a battle GMD with the bug frags. It was okay in 6 because you could sort of cheese it in the graveyard area. You just equip the battery NCP part and then just use the boomer chip, and it automatically kills both of the enemies, and suddenly you just get either a lot of Zenny or a lot of bug frags. That was cool. 4 and 5, it was the worst to grind those, though. I really hated doing that. Yes.
I remember reading people saying that they saw interviews that Battle Network 3 was originally slated
I don't have any knowledge on that.
I would say it would have been okay as an ending. I would have been sad because we never would have gotten 5 or 6, and those are like my favorite games in the series. I sort of see it as a situation similar to the X series, where it was supposed to end at X5, and then they're like, ooh, we should make another game. And then that didn't turn out very well. Yeah. I do think that, like, and I actually made a whole YouTube video about this, about how, like, the Mega Man series in general suffers a lot from the games being really heavily crunched. And I do think that is a serious problem that 11 sort of, like, Mega Man 11 sort of, I don't want to say fixed, but they actually got to develop the game as they wanted to without being like, you have to do it by this point or else. And I do think that 4 did suffer from that quite a bit. Yes. Yes.
The last scenario in Battle Network 2, before you got you run into the base, how did you feel when he said, battling is my forte?
That was a good pun. That I laughed at that. I thought that was pretty funny. Little cringe. I will admit, little cringe. I still laughed at that because my humor makes no sense sometimes.
I like the reference. It's pretty good.
Little
Really
too on the
subtle
nose.
reference, but it's pretty good.
Little on the nose in my opinion, but yeah. How much time we got left? We got about 9 minutes.
I probably need to go in like 3 minutes though.
I can keep doing the Q&A for a little bit longer. Yes. Yes.
So I want to ask both of you, what of the 3 pieces we have, so the manga, the anime, and the game, do you think has just overall the best characterization of the characters? Because I think the anime makes everyone just really interesting and deep with the changes they do, but that's just me.
What do you think?
I haven't read the manga, but I do like. I watched the anime recently when Twitch was doing its marathon, and I do like how a lot of the characters are more fleshed out there with their interests, and I guess maybe their personalizations might differ from the game, but I do like how it fleshes out their characters a little more. They're more than just, Lance and NetBattler or
I would say I actually really liked how the manga characterized them. I thought that was really cool, and especially like the new sort of directions they went in compared to the games through the anime. That was really neat. I would say the manga. In the back with the hat, yes, the brown hat, yes. I would say start with 1 or 2. Like I said earlier, 1 hasn't really aged that well. I do think it is good to play it just for that like little twist at the end with, oh my God, Hub is actually Hub, basically. But 2 is also a good starting place, actually. You could probably jump into 2 with very little issues. So, actually, wait, show of hands. How many people actually started with 2? I'm curious now, because we're getting a lot of voices. Okay, not as much. How many started with 1? Fair enough. I'm assuming a lot of people probably got annoyed with Ice or Elecman's dungeons. Yeah. I would say 2 is probably the best starting place, especially now that I talked about the twist of 1 being like, of Hub being Lan's dead brother reincarnated as a Net Navi. That's the main thing you need to know from 1. So 2 I would say is good. Which they do say in 2, that's true. So I think you can start with 2 with very little issue. Yes.
So concerning network penetration, what are your thoughts on like kind of viewing it as kind of more a more traditional Mega Man game, just kind of in the visual style? That's what it felt like to me.
I would say in terms of like viewing it as a traditional Mega Man game, I would still view it mostly the same in that the level gimmicks are interesting, and I do like that it repeats a lot of the ones from Classic, because you could go, oh, I remember this, I remember this, I remember this. I thought that was interesting, but I still think that like having to choose your attacks with the chips didn't work quite as well for a platformer, and I think that overall the Classic games do have the better level design and the better bosses, especially the bosses. The fact that the first like 2 or 3 bosses were a pain in the butt was not fun in my opinion, especially Fireman. Fireman was awful in network transmission.
Okay. Yeah, I've got to get going.
Okay.
I got to pick up my luggage. But before I go, if you like Battle Network a lot, I highly recommend joining the Team BN Discord server because if you, it's basically the place to find some of the best strategies for like battling viruses and going through the game. And the N1 Grand Prix Discord server as well if you like net battling.
I believe you can find both of them if you look them up on Discord. Like, go to the bottom, and there's a place where you can search for communities. Look up Team BN or N1 Grand Prix, and you should be able to find both of them. I think they're both public servers. What?
If anyone wants photos with us, we can do that too, like the Gutsman and MegaMan photos.
We can do that outside, sure. All right, well, we're pretty much at time. Does anyone have, like, very quick final questions? We have, like, 4 minutes. Yes, in the red.
I guess touching on the weirdest character arc in the entire game, would you hire Mr. Mash?
No. I'm sorry, especially after 3 when he lit the internet on fire, which makes no sense to begin with. Absolutely not. I can't believe they hired him as a teacher. Why? Yes, he was cool in 6. I liked Heat Cross. That was fine. I do not think that was a smart idea to begin with, though. There's a limit to how much I can forgive, and lighting the internet on fire is a lot to ask to look beyond. Yeah. Yes, in the green. Favorite anime episode? There's a lot. There's like over 200 episodes, so I'm gonna have to think about this. I would say, you know which one I really liked? The one where MegaMan, after he got deleted by Pharaoh Man, came back and kicked his butt. That was awesome. Also, the movie where he fused with bass, superb stuff. I would say those are my favorite. I know the movie's not an episode, but close enough. Yes, in the very back with the purple and white stripes.
Ever get a chance to play two versions where you actually physically chip in items, which is to say the pet game with the LCD screen with the chips that you got from the action figure, or the e-reader with I think worth like 4.5 mentioned previously. Do you ever get to work with those and play with those?
Unfortunately, I kind of got into the series a little too late for that. I did try looking them up, and then I realized they cost a ridiculous amount of money and said, I'll pass. I will say that the Legacy Collection, including the patch cards from the e-reader, was like one of my favorite aspects of the collection because I finally got to experience that. Thank God, because they're so much fun to use. All right, well, we're pretty much at time, so thank you all for coming, and no matter what, we'll always be connected.